99.8% of the cases, the moment you file the return, it has reached certainty and finality.
Our scheme of taxation, like it is the world over, is a self-assessment.
Big significant aspect of the Indian tax system, which is not so much there in other jurisdictions, is the reassessment.
Reading the Income Tax Act is akin to what we normally say that you can never step into the same river twice. The Income Tax Act has to consider entire thing what is happening in the society, not just the financial transactions, and the way the society and the financial transactions and businesses have evolved and technologies have made violent and turbulent changes. It's difficult to have a simple income tax law. It's practically not possible.
The structure of the tax administration, which I think an analogy that I like is that it's a inverse pyramid. The tax officer is the point on which a large pyramid rests, the entire nation state rests, and any movement there can actually cause a lot of swaying, and therefore it needs to be, it's a power. For the Bangalore folks, it's like wearing the karaga, no? You have to be very careful when you're wearing the karaga and walking.
We had put our local representatives who could speak and write in Japanese. So I and my team member traveled to Japan. We could not converse in Japanese, they could not converse in English, but we had a 1.5 hours conversation with an interpreter in between, and they were struggling to understand us, not because they wanted to make an addition. They were struggling to understand so that they don't make an addition. The orientation was not to make an addition unless warranted. And finally, hold it, that they didn't make an addition. They dropped all the issues which they had raised. For the only reason, here they found that the genuineness of the assessee in coming forward and putting up with this case was formidable. That itself is a very confidence-giving mechanism.
Welcome to the first episode of the DAKSH podcast on our latest initiative, Tax System Reform. I'm your host, Surya Prakash. Taxation, as we know, is one of the most fundamental sovereign functions. The right of the state over your property, along with the other sovereign function, the monopoly over violence. This latest initiative lies at the intersection of improving dispute resolution mechanisms and working for robust public institutions that are sensitive to the needs of citizens and businesses. This is a collaborative endeavor amongst practitioners, industry, researchers, and institutional stakeholders. Today's conversation, and indeed our research initiative, centers on two fundamental premises and promises of any tax system: certainty, knowing what you owe and why, and timeliness, resolving matters without years of limbo. When these fail, the costs ripple across the economy and society. In this first episode, we are all set to have a unique conversation that brings together both sides of the tax table. We are honored and privileged to have Mr. V Srinivasan, a legend in the field of taxation, who brings decades of experience navigating India's tax landscape from his time with the Wipro Group to now as an independent practitioner in the last few years. Welcome, sir, to this podcast. The first, absolutely privileged and honored. Mr. Pavan Kumar, sir, welcome. A retired senior IRS officer with extensive experience in tax administration, who brings the department's perspective, but also uniquely now, for the last 5 to 7 years, an independent practitioner as an advocate, litigating in the courts and tribunals. We look forward to your perspective, sir. So let me start with the big question. How long do you think from filing a return to achieving certainty about your liability? That is really what it is all about. Ultimately, Previous sir, if I may call you that, that's how we've known you over the years, a brand by itself. Sir, how would you think, what the business expectations regarding certainty? What would you say businesses expect?
The current deadlines for completion of an assessment is a reasonable one.
Right.
I will not be too organized with the time period which is available.
Right, sir.
I will say a maximum of about 24 months from the time we file is a reasonable expectation. The tax department has to be completing its task. It should be equitable across all assessees. There should be an opportunity available to assess so many of us. I would not call the timelines to be unreasonable. I may only say certain privileges can be given. For example, I'm a large corporate. I know my business is more or less the same. It's unlikely that 2 or 3 assessments will be varying in context. So they can bundle up. They can say 3 years assessment taken once. The assessee can opt for it, or even the department can opt for it. That will save substantial time in assessing process itself.
Right.
So once it's picked it up, the issues are the same, the outcomes are likely to be the same. So you can bundle up assessments,
Right.
which is allowed in many foreign countries, I'll say.
Right.
They do allow bundling of assessments. So an issue which arises is common across assessments. So substantial resources of the government will get saved. Assessee also will not have to repeat the assessment process again and again. So I will say a small improvement, I think, will make it very substantial enough. We can discuss about timelines for dispute resolutions which arise. We'll defer to the little
Next
later.
part of the
Yeah.
conversation. That's actually a good idea because it also ensures consistency
Yeah.
across years.
Yeah.
The res judicata problem will be solved.
I will say it's a substantial resource. So I have handled quite a few assessments in the US and all. The agent comes to your office. He picks up 3-4 years together. Issues are all framed. You concur with some, you don't concur with them. What is concurred gets accepted sometimes, and then we closed. Therefore, what is not concurred alone is a matter of resolution, if I have to say.
Right.
So those kind of processes help the government to conserve its resources. Large taxpayers may not want to keep on repeating the same issues again and again. I think it will conserve resources for the government also. Very senior resources are put. Senior officers take up assessments. Their valuable time can be also be conserved for better outcome.
Okay.
So bundling of assessments, taking 3-4 years in one go, allowing the law should permit that. Today also there are seeds of it, but that's for finding out evidence as to what got missed in the past rather than assessing that. Yeah, I'll say. So I'll say a constructive one will be allowing this kind of facilities. We are a large economy today. So what was found in 1961 need not be repeated in 25,
Correct.
26. We can be a little better on that.
The APA and the recent amendments to allow for retrospective filing based on APA, I think are a small step towards that which can be developed. I'm sure we can revisit that the later part of this conversation.
Still, even that has to be a separate assessment for each year.
Each year.
I may want a bundling of assessments. No, orders can be separate, but the issues are common.
Correct.
So,
Issue based rather than Mr. Pavan, sir, from a tax administrator's perspective, PVS says 24 months is comfortable for them. Do you think 24 months is sufficient?
Yeah, let me say in 99.8% of the cases, the moment you file the return, it has reached certainty and finality. Just to put it in perspective, so for example, last year the number of returns filed are 8.56 crores. Of those returns, more than 8.5 crore returns, finality, certainty has been achieved. The only thing is, you do not know which of those balance 6 lakhs are out of this 8.56 crores. So that makes it interesting. Otherwise, what PVS was referring to, taking up on scrutiny, the department is able to take up on scrutiny about 1.5 lakh cases in a year, which constitutes out of 8.56 crores, not even 0.2% or so. Now, this process will be over in about 9 months of filing of return. Dates of filing of return move from July to October. By next June, the process of selecting these cases for scrutiny is over. So, once that is over, other than those 1,60,000 returns, all other returns have achieved finality.
Right.
Apart from that, there is a processing, in which again, out of this, all these 8 crore 56 lakh returns go through the processing, In that, about 2 to 3 lakhs may have some adjustments. There could be an overlap between the cases taken on scrutiny and this. So altogether, one can say broadly about barring 3 to 3 lakh 50,000, entire 8 crore 56 out of 8 crore 56 lakhs returns. Rest of them all have achieved finality and
One
certainty.
small follow-up question would be, amongst the cases that are selected for scrutiny, is there a tendency to pick up more of corporates and businesses? Is that the tendency?
Typically, these are all algorithm based with inputs given to have an idea about those cases where there is a potential. So, most of them will have to be high revenue cases
Right.
normally. But there are some which, if a particular modus operandi has come to the notice of the department, so they keep changing from year to year. There is no human intervention here. The parameters are decided in the beginning of the year or at some point of time, and they are algorithmically applied to the returns which are filed.
Right.
So it's because they are applied predominantly on high revenue cases, as Mr. VV has said, that the same cases seem to come up for scrutiny year after year.
Because the algorithm is throwing up the same thing. The
Yeah.
framework in the algorithm is the same.
Same. So it keeps throwing up. Now, coming to the practicality, the balance 3.5 lakh things we will talk about, and there are going to be some more which will come. Maybe we can talk about them later.
Right.
So it's both in law as well as in practice. This is the baseline. Almost 99.8% returns are. Now, when it comes to appeals, in the sense where these 3.5 lakh returns.
Are you able to do justice to an assessment in that period available to you as an administrator?
Justice is the way we need to define. Major idea of scrutiny is to act as a deterrent. So once that deterrent aspect is put before that, as I said, I know out of 8.56 crore returns, 8.54 crore returns are going to be accepted, but we do not know which 2 will be out of that. That itself would act as a deterrent, the processing and the adjustment. So one would say that looking at the way taxes collections have gone up, perhaps it has been working as a deterrent. But that being so, the experience with the cases taken for scrutiny and what has happened to them has been mixed. That has resulted in huge tax demands and huge arrears, but not much of it is being realized. So there certainly is some good scope to fine tune it. One of the ways, as Mr. PV has said, is that make it more focused, industry wise or entity wise, and then more interactive, so that and in a not an adversarial way,
Right.
but in a not exactly a collaborative way, but a investigating together kind of a way, that should improve and reduce a lot of pain points about this excess demands which are there.
We'll go into that
Yeah.
aspect later in the conversation, but I find that statement you made very interesting. Assessment is a deterrent. So India processes the punishment, truth stays across sectors. I think we only connect it to courts. But certainty, just to unpack the term certainty, it has many aspects to it, right? There is legal certainty. How much do I have to pay? There is assessment certainty. Then there is adjudicatory certainty. How do I know how much has to be paid and others agreeing to it, and all of us agreeing to it. Let's start with knowing the taxation aspect of it, the legal certainty, the ability to read the law and know what the law requires of me. Because sir, your reading of the Income Tax Act, the code is not very different, so we'll keep that out of the conversation. The Income Tax Act, where do you think it stands? Where do you think it can improve?
Our scheme of taxation, like it is the world over, is a self-assessment.
Said.
I must know whether I'm required to be an assessee, whether I'm liable to pay tax. If I'm liable, I'm required to file a return. So the assessee determines whether he's liable or not. So the certainty starts there. He says, this is my income, this is my tax. He puts a return, presents to the department, and it's for the department to. Rest of it is an error correction. So you have to look the entire process as a error correction. I have put a self-assessment presented to you. You feel something has got omitted. You want to add it to me. That error correction cannot be unduly burdensome. Because in self-assessment, the first task is on me. I must know the law. I put it across. So the error correction takes a lot of time. The entire assessment today, processes are very good. Assessment gets concluded very well. The understanding of the officers, I must say, with the experience, vast experience, they have a reasonable, commendable appreciation of the issues. I would only say they do land up with adding some amounts in the assessment. The ability to eliminate those additions, that's a very, very strong, strenuous process. I'll be very happy if those processes can be com- uh, compressed into a time capsule
Right.
that beyond 5 years from the time an assessment is considered, the finality will be given to you. Not available world over, no country gives this, but if it can be achieved even as an objective, silently kept for the government, I think it will be a good objective to have.
Right.
I think it will be reflected in the trade, it will be reflected in the buoyancy of business, it will reflect the confidence people have in the country as the tax administration is there. So,
So about the law itself, do you think, I mean, the complication, the complexity of tax law is amongst the lawyers community, the tax law seems to be the most complex. Your third proviso to fourth exception and those kind of things.
it
Do you
is
think?
like if you go to a doctor, he will use jargons.
Right.
Taxation also has its way of presenting itself.
Right.
It's a complex law because the subject is complex.
Complex.
So you cannot have it too simple. And it can be so, we can segregate the assessees. Sir did mention about 9 crore returns being filed. I'll say for about 8 crores which gets processed, they have income in the nature of salary, other income, capital gains, and those can be compressed. So we can separate the assessees into those for whom the certainty can be delivered faster, and for those the certainty will be a little delayed.
Is required to
that
be a
is-
more
So
deliberative.
you can say those who do not have a business income, the certainty will be achieved in 3 years. If that kind of assurance can be given, that class can be separated and given a little privilege because they don't have complexity every year. Even if I have a capital gain, I'll have it 1 year this year, one may not
Correct.
next year,
Correct.
that kind of system. So a little certainty can be given to substantial portion. The larger business communities, particularly those having cross-border trades, that certainty is not easy to be granted
Correct.
because it's a tussle on who right of taxation, if I have to say. That tussle will be a little hard to pose. But I'm not unhappy with the outcomes this time. So things can always improve. We have to make our destination very attractive. So we must give that certainty in totality. I think that awareness should be there. But doesn't mean certainty is a hard line. It has to be softly followed.
Right, right. So, department's perspective, do you think when you are assessing cases, the taxation provisions that you think could have been better worded or designed, what do you think? What is your?
Yeah, I mean, reading the Income Tax Act is akin to what we normally say that you can never step into the same river twice. So you read it once, you have one idea, you read again, you have another idea. And that's, as we have said, that it's a bit inevitable. The Income Tax Act has to consider entire thing what is happening in the society, not just the financial transactions, and the way the society and the financial transactions and businesses have evolved, and technologies have made violent and turbulent changes. It's difficult to have a simple income tax law. It's practically not possible. Yes, what is possible is to provide more and more guide rails to people who have to read and interpret it,
No.
so that they have some guidance as to how to look at them. But unfortunately, as of now, the way we are structured is that the assessing officer, we are talking all this with reference to those 1.5 2 lakh cases, not with the rest of them. The assessing officers are quasi judicial, investigators and judges rolled into one, and nobody can influence their judgment or decision. And now, when an individual sits like that, and there are judicial interpretations in different parts giving different interpretations, which are again built in the nature of the law and the facts in the society around, gives rise to possible views, different possible views. So one unique view is not possible in all situations. Then the second issue that comes is, when there are different possible views, how should a taxman decide? The principle for that is that if there is a doubt that there could be X way of interpretation, Y of interpretation, you should follow the interpretation which is beneficial to revenue, because otherwise the revenue will lose the issue for good. And now once a brilliant officer, we have a lot of them, I mean, most of the tax officers are brilliant, and the law is like this, the number of interpretations that they can do increases, and then in the tax jurisdictions there are high court judgments and tribunal judgments. These things also influence their thinking. With all this, when they get more than one interpretation, they end up choosing pro revenue ones. So all these 1.5 lakh or 2 lakh cases which you are talking of scrutiny invariably end up with additions or disallowances, which or because two interpretations or more than two interpretations are either possible or have been forced into with the brilliance because of the very nature of things.
Nature of law,
Yeah.
and the structure of the tax administration, which I think analogy that I like is that it's a inverse pyramid. It's the tax officer is the point on which a large pyramid rests, the entire nation state rests, and any movement there can actually cause a lot of swaying, and therefore it needs to be, it's a power. It's For the Bangalore folks, it's like wearing the karaga, no? You have to be very careful when you're wearing the karaga and walking.
Yeah.
But what is your experience, previous, on how predictable is tax administration in India? Do you see that consistency problem?
Consistency is lacking. Two officers doing the same job at the same time, the outcome is not going to be the same. Even with a preceding audit we have been completed. In the sense, if you have an assessment for the previous year and the next year is taken for assessment,
Right.
so you have some issues framed already for the earlier. Those may be repeated, but each officer is different and the outcomes are bound to be. Sir did say it's a quasi-judicial job. That means appreciation of facts and the law together. And he is almost a judge. In fact, all judgments are his judgment only. So in a way, he creates the entire plethora of litigation originates here and it ends here, actually,
Right.
if I can say. So it's a very important job. And the entire administration rests on this judgment. It is not easy. I can say, even for a tax administrator from a company side who is filing a return, we do come up with two interpretations for 2 years. I could have done differently for the last year.
Right.
I could have done differently this year.
Right.
All those are possible. So it is a subject which is subject to a lot of, at least 2-3 views can emerge on almost on every issue which is contentious. And therefore the officer is duty bound to take a view which is revenue sided. I will only say, here a department can do, which are the issues on which they will make an addition, which they will not make. Some kind of experience gives the department a vast amount of data. They know what is the assessee's position. They can issue clarification from time to time. That also will be a endless job in a way, because you have to keep on building circulars and instructions from time to time.
Right.
That's also not a desirable. And even we do not know whether the courts will follow the circulars and
Circulars
instructions.
are not
and
binding on the taxpayer.
It is a dynamic game. And it's not that India is uniquely placed. Most jurisdictions are like. It's not that taxation matters, except that you will find most jurisdictions are sensitive to the matter that an addition made is made only when it's sustainable. In India, we don't keep that yardstick that I'll make an addition only when it's sustainable. I will not make it when it's not sustainable.
You're right.
I think that yardstick, if they have to instill in the assessing officers with the confidence that they're backed well, I think it will be a wonderful outcome we'll have. Today, we have a lot of frivolous additions. They also know. They also know many of them will go away. It's made for the sake of addition, that kind of thing.
So that you many things to unpack. So much has been, you've loaded with wisdom over the years. The sustainability decision.
Yeah.
How does a tax officer determine the sustainability and the individuality? You said how there must be a thinking through of the sustainability of this. So there was a suggestion some time back, I don't know whether it is still in practice, about how adjustments beyond a certain limit or of taxpayers beyond a certain size, their assessments have to be signed off by the larger group of people or something like that. We will not go into the faceless, which is a recent development, and we are all learning how it is going to impact. So possibly it's another conversation. But sir, what he is pointing out are structural problems that have not changed much really over the last decades, few 2-3 decades, I think, right?
Yeah.
So what is your prognosis and what some possible solutions to that problem?
See, unfortunately, this tendency has only increased over a period of time because there are absolutely no supporting structures for a decision which is taken with fairness and by judging whether it is sustainable addition or not and taking a call on it. Whereas that's why the culture which has crept in is it has been put on its head. It's not a question of whether this addition can be sustained. It's a question of whether can I be absolutely satisfied that I need not make this addition. Now, where is this absolute satisfaction? One has to take a step back, look at it in terms of law and facts. And so, I am afraid unless institutional changes happen, institutional culture changes, unfortunately, it's available in the public domain. I am not giving any internal secret of the department. What was there with assessing officers, where assessing officers were doing additions which they very well know that are not sustainable, has moved up to the Commissioner Appeals.
Right.
So now, virtually for the taxpayers, the first forum at which they may hope to get some relief has become the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, not the. So when if a Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals is not able to do that kind of a job, it's something which has to be introspected in the system, and it's a continuous process. It would be happening, but then at the end of the day, each one is an individual and he has to fend for himself. So I should say that unless good amount of cultural change happens within the institution, this is unfortunately going to be the reality with which we have to put up with.
I'll give a nice anecdote to share just to how certainty is achieved by certain countries like Japan for a moment. There was an assessment which was picked up for my employer at that time. The question was how much profits is attributable to Japan. This is not a very exact science because attribution itself is a fair rather than accurate.
It's an art.
As an art. So they invited us. We had put our local representatives who could speak and write in Japanese. That was not adequate. So I and my team member traveled to Japan. We could not converse in Japanese. They could not converse in English. But we had a 1.5 hours conversation with an interpreter in between. And they were struggling to understand us, not because they wanted to make an addition. They were struggling to understand so that they don't make an addition. The orientation was not to make an addition unless warranted. And finally, hold it, that they didn't make an addition. They dropped all the issues which they had raised for the only reason, one, here they found that the genuineness of the assessee in coming forward and putting up this case was formidable. That itself is a very confidence-giving mechanism. So in a way, what happens that I will not make an addition unless it's warranted. The small orientation change in the mindset of the administration, I think that will clear all the issues. To make an addition as a mechanical one, rather than make it only when it's essential, I think that will make a lot of it.
So I just want to go back into the timelines, the certainty of it. While the assessment is 24 months and it seems to be that it's reasonable and possible, one big significant aspect of the Indian tax system, which is not so much there in other jurisdictions, is the reassessment, sir. It is the ability, the power to reopen closed years. And the fight over the last couple of years, Ashish Agarwal or anything else, that seems to be a big challenge structurally and in the law. The need to go back and revisit settled positions, not just previous years, but also for the same year. Uh, um, what is your view on that, sir?
Yeah, reassessment has to be looked at as an effacing and a concluded assessment.
Right,
This is a very serious issue.
right.
You have
Could
assessee
you just
as
explain that, sir, a bit?
I file a return,
Hmm.
you have completed an assessment, you suddenly find that certain things have got
Missed.
and then therefore you want to pick it up. A concluded assessment, the moment a notice for reassessment comes, in a way you can presume that the concluded assessment is set aside,
Right.
effaced.
Right.
So in law, it's called effacing the old existing assessment. That means you are disregarded it.
Afresh, renew.
So you want to do it all over again. This is not a very good process. Yeah, anything which you want to do must be restricted to the issue you want to raise. It cannot open up a plethora of issues all over again. It's not that let us play the game all over again. That's not the way a reassessment should be done.
Right.
So I will say, had it been an occasional pickup here and there, it will be accepted as a process of law. When it is becoming rampant, when Supreme Court has to be told that so many 90,000 notices have been issued on the last day, and Ashish Agarwal has to step in with 142 Constitution and other things, Article, all these things are very extreme mechanisms. I'll be worried with this kind of, because if 90,000 notices have to be issued, the two only on the last day, whether it's on the right time or not right time, instead of Supreme Court, instead of adjudicating on the order and enabling the department, possibly it would have been better served to know why it was so much delayed. I think that should have been the first question which should have been raised, rather than raised as to how to give remedy to the department or a way of finding out how to do the assessment.
Right.
I think that's one. But the process is still continuing. It's not the reassessments. I will say it shows that assessments are done half-heartedly. If you do assessment wholeheartedly and complete it with all the material which is available and presented to you,
Right.
a reassessment situation may not come at all. And today you are left bundle of issues for reassessment's scope. What are the basis on which a reassessment come? Some of them are vague. An audit being taken by CAG, that is also a reassessment. If the department has to answer the CAG, why should the assessee suffer the consequences of an audit? I do not know. These are all fallacies in the law, a little far-fetched. But a democratic law will have to ensure that there's no, finally, avoidance and evasion.
Correct.
That much is, I think, to be granted, if I have to say.
I think it all comes down to the 9 crore. It's only 9 crore returns that are being filed for a country of this size. So how do you make sure you're extracting the most out of these returns filed? So, but your thoughts on reassessment?
No, actually, the word reassessment gives an idea as if an assessment has already been made and it's being re-looked into. Out of the total reassessments we are talking about, those numbers are still small,
Right.
which though they should be even smaller. The major thing which is happening with the reassessments is the department's capacity to gather information has increased over a period of time.
Absolutely.
Then it will be shocking to know that there are large number of transactions where people are not filing returns. There are transactions from sub-registrar's offices. If you collect, people who have transacted in properties worth crores of rupees do not file a return of income. People who have done businesses, contracts, which data is captured in TDS returns from the
GST.
other parties, GSTs or bank deposits, many of them are out. So the reassessment is a good tool because in design, for the people who file the returns, we are accepting 99.8% returns.
Right.
Now, when you have left 99.8% returns without even having a look at it, whatever is the deterrent value of this 0.2% examination, it's better to have some control for some period of time to revisit some of them so that they also know that, okay, if today, this year I escape, then I have escaped for good. So that law now over a period has come down. The reopening itself has come down now to 6 years. Search and seizure is another way when you go and get additional evidences. That has come down over, for example, if somebody is filed return but then is searched, how long he should concern himself. He will have to get finality.
Right.
So that has now come down to 6 years. So law-wise, these timelines have been compressed, which are perhaps reasonably okay considering the Indian ground reality and our ability to handle this workload. So I agree with him that wherever an assessment has been made, saying that audit has a different point of view, based on that you can you have to reopen. It's not that the assessing officer,
There's no option.
no, he has no option. Is a structural, a legal issue which was to look into, but the very process of reassessment is required for widening and deepening tax base. Again, what happens in these cases is what is happening in the scrutiny assessments, that the decisions which are happening are not where you make additions which are sustainable. The decisions are happening with a similar outlook that I have the data and I just take. So that is adding to the avoidable work for both the taxpayers as well as to the, and reducing the trust or credibility of the institutions.
So let's quickly move on to adjudication. Um, Adjudication is a problem across domains, not just for tax. What do you think can be is the situation with adjudication? You said 24 months, and you'll revisit the question of adjudication later on. So, sir, what is your experience been with adjudication? So,
I mean, appellate
so
remedies.
tribunal, High Court, Supreme Court, the timelines for adjudication.
Today, the roadblock seems to be the Commissioner Appeals.
Right.
So everybody else is in a clear road.
Absolutely.
In the sense, tribunal sits with accumulation of only about 25,000 cases
Drastically
for so many branches. It is like a vacation for them, if I have to say. That's so in a way, tribunal is sitting very well. High courts have caught up quite well. The pendency in the High Court is not as big as one.
Right.
Supreme Court, of course, when is the final authority to determine the law, I think it will be very, sometimes it's not to hurry is also a good principle there,
Right.
I'll say. So it's the Commissioner Appeals which is a hurdle today. And that continues to be a hurdle for the last 5 years.
5 years.
The accumulation is almost 5.5 lakh number of cases, if I can say. In terms of tax, is almost 1 year's collection, if I had to put it, there is a very staggering amount. So these are all matters.
Fortunately, international tax matters go to DRP and then straight away to ITAT. It's only the non-international tax matters that are at CIT.
That's true. You are right. So my own sense is the Commissioner Appeals, for them to clear this backlog, some special efforts are required.
Right.
Maybe one or two I can readily suggest is that covered issues make a submission. They can pass two appellate orders, those for covered issues and those for not covered issues.
Right.
If it's covered issue within the assessee, one temporary interim order can be passed and that relief can be granted. So the pendency and the aggregation of tax which is there in the pendency, that will go away.
Right.
So the next appellate order will be one for those which are not covered issues. That can be one method. Number two is to wait for Supreme Court decisions which will possibly cover most of them. So in a way, apply the Supreme Court and get yourself relieved. These are the two mechanisms which are readily available.
Right.
Amnesties and all are good, but I would say it's not in the interest of tax-paying community in totality. It causes prejudices to those who are complied.
Compliant.
So I'll not say. So, so I will not go there, which is what the government has tried to do by trying to give some kind of settlements and other things so that you withdraw all appeals and go. It has not. It may have found some acceptance in some quarters. I'll say more acceptance means more is the problem rather than the solution. So,
So, sir, you said problem definitely tribunal pendency has come down. For those of us who seen those bad days of tribunal,
within
seems
6
like,
months, within 6 months, you get a relief.
we
to
get a relief. But the high courts, I still feel that maybe because of vacancies in the high courts themselves, there are not the tax benches don't sit regularly enough. Is one of the views.
Allocation of tax to only few judges generally, it happens, and therefore, unlike the tribunal, which is a specialized court, a high court is a general court.
Yeah.
It deals with law in generality,
Right.
and therefore the judges acquire their skills, some of them, while they are on the tax benches. And if they are a DR before, some amount of imparting of skills would have happened, otherwise learn. But to be very fair, I think their adaptability has been fairly good.
Right.
Most leading courts which I have seen, when I say leading courts where tax matters are maximum referred, the adaptability is good. Many judgments are fastly disposed.
Yeah.
In if the hearing, I'll say within 2-3 years you get a outcome once the appeal is filed. I think that pendency in a court is not too bad considering the totality of the cases the courts have to handle.
Correct.
And today I will say the confidence with which the matters are all handled by the courts. I will say Bombay, Bangalore, Karnataka High Court, Delhi High Courts. You will find very interesting judgments come, which resonates with the correct principles of law.
Correct.
I'll say.
Right. Timelines is not. Sir, your thoughts on that?
See, what has happened is that we also have to look at these numbers which are there before tribunal and high courts and Supreme Court. In the background, there is a clogging at the state appeals level. Because of the clogging and two Vivad Se Viswas Tak schemes and two increases in monetary limits, the effect of all of this has drastically reduced compared to earlier. The appeals which are pending before the tribunals and High Court and Supreme Court. And as you rightly mentioned, before the High Courts, in fact, relative to the timelines for many other areas, the tax timelines are far better. So one cannot have, and in any case, the matter should not be going to High Courts unless there is a question of law involved. The facts should settle at tribunal level. So if we have this many appeals, I think right now we have around maybe 10,000 kind of appeals in High Courts on questions of law, that would also require looking into as to what are the areas where these legal issues they can be addressed by the executive or through the legislature or by an administrative decision about taking a position. But when it comes to commissioners, the Act says that as far as possible within 1 year, the commissioner has to, as I mentioned the numbers, now per year about 1.5-2 lakhs returns, and along with the adjustments of 143(1), we may have around 2.5-3 lakh cases where there is a potential for appeal.
Right.
As I mentioned about the reassessments, that is adding another almost 2.5 lakh, 3 lakh because of the
At the CATA level?
No, at the assessing officer level, the reassessments, because of the sheer volume of data and the initiatives the department has taken in analyzing it and then taking it forward. Now, per year, you're going to have almost 6 lakh kind of orders at the assessing officer level, where timelines are fixed. 24 months, it's done. Now, a matter can be reopened up to 6 years. It will take 2 years for assessment to be made. That means to get a finality, I'm telling the longer timeline, it can be 8 years. And if the assessing officer, and in such a case where a reopening is made, certainly there will be an addition. The probability of addition is going to be there. Appeal with the C8 appeal is taking more than 5 years. Whereas the Act says that as far as possible, the C8 appeal should pass an order within 1 year. Then because of improvements, otherwise, tribunal is not taking much time. So if we are looking at a finality for an assessment in a simple kind of a manner, it's going to take almost 10 years. And now many of these things are also happening as ex parte assessments, particularly the reassessments, where there is no response or whether notices serving, whether effectively it has happened or not, but legally it has happened. And because of the limitation. Now once the assessments are ex parte, they will be best judgment assessments based on the data available. Certainly they won't be fair. So when the matter travels for 10 years to tribunal, most likely it will come back to the assessing officer to relook at it. So these are the issues.
Nuances, the legal
things. But these are for those exceptions.
Right.
I mean, those 5 lakh cases or 2 to 3 lakh kind of cases. This is, but then adding them year after year really makes it daunting.
I think the point you made about why the volume might have come down, the timelines may have improved, but the substantive issues under consideration are so important and critical for the system as a whole that they can upset. And that certainty in adjudication, not just a decision being made, but also consistency and predictability is becoming even more important now. I think the last few years with the decisions of some of the decisions of the Supreme Court and the High Court, some of the High Courts.
It's true. That is true. I think each forum seems to be a new forum rather than continuity of the earlier one.
Correct.
I think that's normally
trend.
the earlier forum sets out the adjudicating matters. It was to be that more often you pass the tribunal test, you will pass the High Court test, and you will pass the Supreme Court test also. It doesn't seem to be so. No, you may not. You may even each one is a new game. You have to play it all over again. I think that causes a lot of uncertainty. I'll say there is no a good tribunal order doesn't mean that a outcome is final. You may get it reversed in the High Court, and that risk is quite high nowadays.
Correct.
So
Correct.
that is so that means the number of forums should be shrunk now. It was good to have so many forums because it was an efficient dispute resolution mechanism earlier. But once you know it's adding to uncertainty more, it may be nice to have one tax code which is final, and that determines at an early stage of closure.
Right.
That will be a very fine outcome. Many countries have a tax court as final. Very rarely they travel to the Supreme Court.
Correct.
It's very important matters which virtually goes up to the constitutional touch that other things don't travel to the
Correct.
So we may have some kind of a tax court as a final court.
Yeah. It has been, as you know, it has been talked about in the past, National Tax Tribunal. We may have to think of other ways of circumventing the shortcomings of the previous design. So your thoughts on consistency from a outcome perspective?
Yeah, I mean, nothing is predictable. So you can't, I mean, a consistency, if it is there, then it can be predictable. Now nothing is predictable. Of course, it's not that we are dealing with 2 plus 2, whether it's 4 or...
Of course.
It's not as simple as that. But still, as you mentioned, the continuity of forum, if it is not there, then the predictability in each forum becomes difficult. That actually adds to litigation because the chances of success would also like people who take chances.
Right.
And other issue is
On both sides.
On both sides. That's where department is a major litigator. But the issue is also this. There are instances where departmental officers have taken a particular stand thinking that this is the right stand. And some officers took a stand which is not that. And ultimately the matter goes to Supreme Court and Supreme Court agrees with those officers' view. And the ones who have taken a stand here that this is not the fair one,
Right.
will end up answering as to why they took that stand which is against revenue.
Correct.
So when there is no predictability in the forums above, when there is no, the judicial forums above, when there is no clarity about law and to the facts, we haven't come to that. We are assuming that the tax officer is having all facts with him,
Right.
apart from the law which is given. That's another thing about representation from the taxpayers. That also adds its own dimension. So with time limitation, which is hanging, and with the representation, even the taxpayer will also balance between whether he should be honest and do all the representation or just buy time and then give something, and anyway this is going to lead to litigation.
We've not gone into the professional regulation, professional ethics,
No,
and all of
the
that.
culture, when we speak of institution, this is not an institution. The tax practitioners or taxpayers is not an institution, formal institution.
They are individuals.
But it has its own way of functioning as a reaction to this. It's not that it can be proactive about it. So with these things, what happens is that for both taxpayers as well as for the department, litigation becomes the default option. And the costs of litigation compared to the revenues involved are nothing. In many cases, cost of litigation is very small.
For the department.
No, for both. For the department, they don't even find the cost because...
But sir, cost of litigation for the taxpayer is significant.
It is very significant.
Very significant.
No, we are talking of if there is a 100 crore addition, what cost of litigation should I look at?
Depends, of course, on the
There are two very important costs. One is the engaging the counsels, and that is one. Another is the interest clock.
Interest law, sir.
Interest
And the
law.
internal team.
Because I run a 12% interest clock on the unpaid
I agree,
taxes.
sir.
It's not going to be a very easy burden on most because 12% is a very heavy burden, I'll say.
With the margins that are
That is
now
on
there.
the direct taxes. For indirect taxes, it can be 18 or even 24.
Correct.
That can be. So it's a very.
The cost of funds in India have not come down, but the margins have kept shrinking.
Sorry.
So, sir, in fact, the cost for the taxpayer starts from the notice itself. You have to hire somebody to put together records, represent yourself. I'm sure this is a very topic in which.
No, we can labor a lot, but essentially we have to see containing litigation is the onus on the government, is the onus on the taxpayers collectively.
Collectively.
I have no problem. That onus can be partly discharged by the courts by having one early outcome on the court decisions. In the sense, you can say one tax court is good, but assuming that one high court determines and you find it has set out, if other courts also follow it, then it will possibly you will find that the kind of a mandate is not there. Each court is a constitutional court by itself. Therefore, that is not going to happen very easily.
So,
Basic issue is once a addition is made or a dissolvance is made, there is no forum available for quick settlement of the issues. It has to go through a designed judicial process only. There was one in terms of settlement commission, which had its own supporters and opponents, but there was one that has been taken out.
I'm still fighting one case in the Supreme Court, one as a appellant, one as a defendant, which originated in 1999. Okay. A very important matter for that company, but it's still lingering. Why?
So, what is your view on alternate? You mentioned settlement commission, but any thoughts on alternate dispute resolutions? And we can possibly segue that into international experiences with alternate dispute resolution mechanisms. Settlement commission suffered from, I think there is no other way to call it, corruption. Right, you had retired tax officers sitting in settlement commission, and that led to rent seeking. So, what do you think will help some sort of a alternate dispute resolution institution?
See, the issue is when it comes to tax matters, we seem to move between ethics, morals, and pragmatism. One has to be clear about that first. Settlement commission suffered not necessarily because of corruption, because that is what is the elephant in the room in the whole country.
Okay.
It has suffered because people had this, that originally settlement commission was given as a forum only to people who are not caught by the department, but whose time for filing return is over.
For them to come on
For
their
them
own and say.
on their own and say, and then the settlement commission would look at them. Then people, it was found, the society being what it is, that not many were doing that. They had no incentive to go and approach the forum. So then people felt that we should expand the scope of this forum because there's a forum. And secondly, when we are doing searches, those searches were resulting in a lot more litigation. And in fact, as you just mentioned, 1999, there could be some such cases of 1980 still in Supreme Court,
Right.
or in the third round or fourth round kind of a litigation. So somebody felt that, okay, let us get some revenues here. And this was opened up to others. Even when there is a department inquiry or search or whatever, still a person could go there.
Right.
And settlement commission would. And settlement commission was, what it was doing was, it was making them pay more taxes than they would have paid.
Right.
At the same time, that could be the sort of bargain for giving them immunity from penalty and prosecution. But this was just one forum like that. Now, we have moved away from that. We have gone away with the authority for advanced rulings. So current thinking is that there is a small beginning made with one dispute resolution committee or council, TRC, which is a no starter. So there is a vacuum there. One has to find, whether we call it an alternate dispute resolution mechanism or whatever, one has to have a mechanism whereby, like Karnataka government recently, last year, amended the Civil Courts Act, where they said that when two parties approach the court must mandatorily refer them to settlement. And that would be through a forum, independent forum. And only when that fails, then it should take up, and some guidelines, some timelines are given to it. So we need to perhaps look at some things like this, for which we need forums outside the department. Naturally, the experts in tax, you have to tap either the professionals or the departmental people. Invariably, you will have, and many professionals may not be very keen to get into these forums because of the remunerations there. So, with those practical issues, but we need to create whereby option is given to both parties outside the.
I think the keyword there is option, sir.
Yes.
Mandatory
Yes.
mediation is actually an oxymoron. Sir,
I will
your
only
thoughts.
give, we have to look alternate dispute ADR in two perspectives. There are binary issues, legally allowed, legally not allowed. There is nothing to do in ADR.
Yeah.
In the sense, either you are there, you are not there, that kind of thing. Only when there's a computation,
Right.
which multiple options of how to compute it, there can be an ADR. Transfer pricing is amenable to ADR.
Great point.
Disallowance, which is not precise, but it has to be evolved as a thumb
14A.
rule, something like that.
Yeah.
Those are the areas where there can be some amount of ADRs. Now, already you find the government has taken some steps there. The safe harbor
Yes.
is some kind of a composition scheme that I will this much I'll accept and close it.
Yeah.
APA within 2 years mandate for IT sector is a phenomenal development. It's an industry priority privilege which has been given, I will say, which I think I welcome wholesomely because I have been part of the IT industry myself. So these are good steps, if I have to say. Where the ADR is still missing is some kind of a forum which will not hair split on the margins, will accept the two views and give some early adjudication. I think that forum still can be created. It's a post-assessment litigation rather than a pre-assessment litigation. If that can be given, I think that will be a very good step. Where the quantification is the matter of dispute, that can be given to experts.
Correct.
I think they'll be able to find
The
it.
DRP becoming an ADR mechanism.
Correct.
So that even before the demand is fructified,
Correct.
there is an option to engage on the substantive
Correct.
side.
Correct. And the experts can get involved.
Experts.
They can even submit reports to the DRP.
Yeah.
That this is what is and the outcome can be embedded into the DRP's directions, if I can say.
Sir, last questions to both of you. If you thought something could be done in the next 12 to 24 months, what would your recommendation be? Let's do this in the next 12 to 24 months.
Disposal of appeals by the Commissioner.
Commissioner appeals.
I think
that should be targeted.
That should be targeted. Extra resources provided, and it should be more like a administrative mandate.
Right.
That it shall be completed within 24 months.
Right.
I think some signs of that are visible now.
Okay.
I hope those signs are getting carried through for ultimate result. Disposal doesn't mean adverse disposal. Fair disposal is what I will look for.
Due process and principles of natural justice and all of those things. Sir, what do you think can change in the next 12 to 24 months?
No, I agree with him that the adjudication process has to be declogged, and the clogging is with the CIT appeals. It should not only happen in numbers, it should also happen in, for want of a better word, quality. Unfortunately, that's a very big challenge with the resources which are available. So the department is functioning with the same resources which it had 50 years back.
I understand. Every commissioner has to given about 800 CITAs, 800 cases of disposal every year. That is almost 2 cases per year, per day, which is not very easy to achieve.
So some ways have to be found as to how that has to be addressed, and the rest, in fact, if we look at it, we are going to get a new act from 1st of April. That is going to come with a lot of challenges of transition. So I would say that maybe we have to brace up ourselves for more of turbulence going forward, and taking some proactive steps about it than we could have now. So maybe we don't have much window left or much elbow room left to take some proactive steps now, in addition to what is being done.
It's good to see consensus amongst the sides. So thank you so much. It was a fascinating conversation, insightful, very constructive, solution oriented. Today we talked about certainty and timeliness in India's direct tax system. Thank you, PVS sir and Mr. Pavan Kumar, for that insightful conversation. You have been watching the Daksh podcast. To find out more about us and our work, visit our website dakshindia.org. That is DAKSH India.org. Do share your feedback on social media, tag us, and share the episode. Follow us for more such conversations. A special thanks to the team at Daksh, Smita and Harshita, and Taper Fox Podcast Studios in Bangalore. Thank you for listening.